This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. I've said this so many times here, and I'm going to say it again because it's so important. We have to heal from trauma. Me, you, all of us, we have trauma from our past. And if you're somebody that says, well, I have no trauma, you're mistaken. With all due respect, there's all different types of trauma. It might not have been a car accident. It might not have been a passing of a relative back in the day when you were a child. But there's things that went on. Could have been just a confrontation on the playground with another kid. And you're holding on to that in some shape and form. And that is holding you back from living the life that you want to live. We're going to talk about that today, kind of unpack this whole trauma thing. She's a licensed professional counselor at Inner Transformation Counseling and helps people with this all the time. People have epiphanies once they realize what kind of trauma they suffered in their childhood. Shari Edgell is back with us. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I sound like a broken record. But it needs to be repeated because I don't believe many of us realize it, accept that this trauma thing is real, and we're dealing with it. Would you say, Shari, that most of it comes from our childhood?
I think a lot of it can. It's pretty rare that I have someone in my office who hasn't had some form of trauma, but like you said, they don't know that. And I think kind of one of the concepts that's risen up in the counseling world is this idea of big T trauma, which would be what we would think of. There's some death-related, threatened harm, sexual abuse kinds of things that will happen. And those are very tangible, and people can recognize when they're traumatized by those things. But there's also small T trauma, which has to do with things like neglect or not being seen or understood or known. And those can definitely impact a person as they move forward.
Can it be, as I don't want to minimize anything, but can it be as simple as that situation on the playground? You are 7 years old. Your best friend walks up to you and says, "We're not friends anymore. Goodbye," and walks away. And now you're like, I don't have any friends. I'm all alone. I'm here in the middle of the playground. It's activity period. Everybody's playing, having fun. And now I don't have a friend anymore. And that's it. And then you manage eventually to meet some new friends. And but that one situation, could that be holding somebody back from a certain relationship goal in their life?
I would definitely say so. And so I think the easiest way to explain it is to look at Maslow's hierarchy of need, which I kind of use in a couple of different ways. But if anybody's familiar with that, it's a pyramid that Maslow came up with to show that we as human beings are going to put whatever's most important to stay alive in those categories, working from the bottom up. So the first is physical, food, water, shelter, air, those kinds of things. And then there's safety. And both those, physical and safety, have to do with tangible things that we need. But then when you get to the next level, that's about belonging, and very important for a kiddo in school. So somebody that you think is your best friend walks up and says, "Hey, we're done," and you don't even know what happened.
Right.
That definitely can traumatize a kid.
Is it true that, and what we're talking about here, Shari, right, is the subconscious. That's where this stuff is sitting. And your subconscious doesn't know you're not 7 anymore. It's doing the same thing it did back when you were 7, 8, 9, 10. Now as an adult, and you could be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever. It doesn't know the difference. So it's still trying to make you feel better in some regards, right?
Yeah. And I think that for most people, we use the word trigger, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't use that word because they didn't have this life-threatening or serious injury kind of a thing happen." But I think in the broad context, if we look at
Mhm.
triggers as more these events that kind of take us off guard, that immediately send us into a more negative emotional state, then you can use that word trigger for a variety of situations.
So I get what you're saying in terms of that word trigger. What's a substitute word? What other word could we put in there if we think that, trigger might sound a little too harsh for some situations?
Well, I think you could talk about it being something that's an activating event or
Mm.
situation that causes our emotions to change
Wow.
that we weren't even aware of. And again, you look at that broad sort of definition of that, and I want to throw in one other concept, and that's the concept of the highly sensitive person. Elaine Aron, I think back in the 90s, came up with that, where those kinds of people have very intense reactions to any kind of sensory input, more so than someone who's not. And a couple of the qualities of the highly sensitive person are one, like loud noises. Like for someone who is not highly sensitive, a loud noise is nothing. For someone highly sensitive, it is. There is also this piece of being highly conscientious. So take a kiddo put into a home, nobody's beating anybody, but dad or mom yells all the time. And that can be a trigger for people because it's too intense.
Can I, at this juncture, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're right at a point where I heard something and the two examples you gave. So here we go. Our subconscious wants to keep us safe. And that's what it's doing. That's why it's bringing up these things from the past now as an adult. But all of these fears, if you will, but let's say that 7-year-old, the friend left him, they could have a fear of abandonment now as an adult because of that one situation. I've heard that the only two fears we have are the ones you just described: fear of loud noises and fear of actually falling. That's the other one, fear of falling. That is just from evolution. That was put in us to really protect us. All the other fears that we have, we learned them. What do you think about that?
Oh, I agree. I agree. And, we are geared towards survival. We have to be. And so any of those elements that come in, I think one of the problems is, though, that sometimes we'll pull that little 7-year-old into today.
Yep.
Little 7-year-old back in the day, very limited resources. What if that kiddo goes home and has neglect because for whatever reason, maybe there's poverty, maybe the parents really are just trying to survive and so they can't pour into that child. That's going to make a whole different situation for the kid that comes home and has a place to process, my best friend just, you know, gave up on me, versus they go home and they have nobody with whom they can talk about it and internalize that. And then as
Mm,
an adult, forget they're an adult with more resources than a
right.
7-year-old.
So really what we're focusing on here is the subconscious, where the triggers or the traumas that lead to the triggers or vice versa is in your mind and you're not even aware of it. And I guess I should let everybody know your subconscious is roughly 90 something percent of your waking life. It's everything, essentially, right? Is it always looking for proof? So let's go back to our example of the 7-year-old and friend flat left him on the playground. Whatever that could lead to, fear of abandonment, self-esteem, whatever it is the subconscious always looking for proof to back that up? Another situation comes up and, I'm going to talk like I'm the subconscious. Oh, yeah, there, see, there, you're not good enough. Your friend left you and there's another situation comes up. Your subconscious looks at it and says, there you go again. There you go again. And now it starts stacking up. as almost like evidence in a courtroom where it's just throwing down more evidence to make you believe that you aren't good enough or you should have a fear of abandonment. Does it work that way?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things I think that will be a part of why that happens. One is when you look at maladaptive schemas, and schemas are these, I describe them as these filters that we developed as kids when certain needs weren't met.
Hmm.
And they change and alter what we see. And so we might even have, in this example, we might even have a kid come up on the playground and go, "Hey, I'd like to play with you. But now that I have this abandonment schema going on, I'm going to kind of set that aside as an exception." Well, that doesn't really count because I'm watching for this threatening abandonment.
Mm.
Another thing is called confirmation bias, which says that whatever I believe to be true about myself, I'm going to behave in a way that will invite back and confirm that. So if I think and I'm looking through the lens of abandonment, I'm going to
Hmm.
walk into a room of people, head down, don't make eye contact, and I don't say a word. And guess what happens?
Hmm. Nothing. Like you
Yeah.
don't connect with people, or it sounds like you're also going down the road of when people say, I don't know what it is. I can't find all guys are the same. They're just they're this, they're that, or I got a ton of male friends that say all women are crazy. Why? Because they're looking at it through that certain lens, or because of what their subconscious believes they're attracting or seeking the same type of people. So their perception is the reality. All women are crazy. All men are crazy.
Well, I totally agree with you. And that's because the tendency is that we're going to go to what's familiar,
Right.
even if it's not healthy. I call it the default setting kind of back there, and the brain goes, "Ooh, I know that person and I know how to engage with them."
Hmm.
Even if conscious mind says, "Absolutely not. I am not going to get back into a relationship like that." And there we go, fourth, fifth, sixth time.
Yeah, because it's familiar. And what is familiar? Safe. And what does your subconscious want to do? Keep you safe. Right back to it.
Hmm.
Wow.
And we aren't good with uncertainty.
Yes. Yeah. So let's go down the road of I know this isn't the best thing, but maybe they'll change. I know what they are, so maybe I can change them. Yeah, there's a million different things that we could add to the relationship model there or label. Um,
Sure.
what do we do? How do we fix this?
Well, a lot of it is recognizing the pattern.
Hmm.
If I've got this abandonment filter going on and I'm confirming all the time that I'm going to be abandoned, I have to recognize that because the pattern is so set. I'm not even aware that I'm going after that same thing or seeing that same thing. And
Hmm.
so I think that's the first step. Um, One of the tools that I really have enjoyed using, I can't remember who developed it back in the day, but some more to modern um, people in my field, Dan Siegel, Janina Fisher, talk about using the window of tolerance. And so in my office, when people come in, you're going to get a worksheet most days because I'm very visual. I find that my clients are very visual. So if you can imagine, you're looking from your perspective at the right side of or the left side of your paper, and you've got this gap about this big. And there's quite a bit of room in that, and that would be considered an open window of tolerance. So, in that, what's happening is that your frontal lobe is online and your emotions are there. It's not that they're not, it's just that you're able to cope with them. So, when using this language as sort of being activated or triggered, what I like about this model is it lets someone make it their own. I don't have to have a diagnosis of PTSD. I don't have to have complex trauma, PTSD in my life, which will manifest very similarly to PTSD, even if it doesn't have the death or the harm element to it. Or I can have betrayal trauma.
Mm.
And I can still have all of those qualities. So here I am in an open window. I'm going along just fine. I'm seeing something through the abandonment. Something happens that makes me feel abandoned. And I will move over to this very narrow window of tolerance. And in that narrow tolerance, and people identify with it all the time, I say, "You don't feel safe." And they'll go, "Yes, I do not feel safe." And often they think the technique to be able to come out of that is to be able to be perfect or require someone else to be perfect. And in the narrow window, frontal lobe or your logical mind is kind of not working too great, and all of your emotions are completely overwhelming.
Wow. When they fill out this worksheet, do you find that a lot of people have epiphanies even at that moment, or it's a little bit of a realization connecting back to, uh, call it the trauma?
Yeah, I the nice thing about the concept is it's instead of I this is me experiencing this, it almost gives them this bird's eye view where they can look at that worksheet and identify, oh yes, this is just where I'm at. It's not me. And a couple of things about that. You've got two different reactions that can happen in that narrow window. One is this overreaction, and you're going to find all kinds of things from hypervigilance to this anticipation that something bad's going to happen. This might be where someone blows up in rage. And that makes sense, right? Because in that narrow window, I don't feel safe and I'm going to go into protective mode. Other people will underreact, they'll go numb, they'll sleep a lot, they'll think of themselves as lazy, lots of avoidance kinds of situations. So
Mm.
um, they're able to look at that and somehow sort of separate from something's terribly wrong with me into, oh, I'm in a narrow window. I get it. And I know what this is like. I know what it's like to be in an open window. And it gives them hope.
How would you work with somebody from that point forward? You know, we identify it, call it on a worksheet, and maybe you have that epiphany as somebody that you're working with. What happens from that point?
Well, we identify, where are you at? And they'll vacillate between the two of them too. Like they'll really try up here in that hypervigilant sort of reaction. And then they realize they're not going to fix it. Nothing's going to be perfect. And then they just shut down. So the interesting thing about the mind is that it's malleable. And I'm very much a cognitive therapist. So two things that will bring from that narrow window back into a more open window. One is compassion. And typically my clients are incredibly harsh with themselves.
Aren't we all? You know, I mean, let's go there, right at this moment. We would never say the things that we say to ourselves, whether you're looking in the mirror, you wake up first thing in the morning, oh, what is that? Oh, another pimple. Is it? Well, oh my gosh, look at me. What a mess. You look horrible. You would never walk up to somebody you love, and you should be loving yourself. You would never say that to them. And how many
Mm-hmm.
people can actually look in the mirror and say, I love you? I think if you picked 100 people and asked them to do that, maybe 10 might be comfortable. Others may actually cry. I've heard people that it's so heavy on them they can't because they've lived a life of shaming themselves and being hard on themselves. Now we try to heal from that and more, or those traumas lead us to believe that we're not good enough. Like that's universal. Is it true that we feel we're not good enough? All of us in one shape and form. That's like kind of a universal belief or limiting belief within us. That's what I've heard. Do you think that's true?
Well, particularly for people who've been wounded and have not done their work or haven't realized, right? Again, we're all on this default thing. So,
Haven't we all been wounded though, Sherry, in some form?
I would think. Yeah. And again, some have figured it out. Some had the support from family members to be able to be guided out of that and how to, be able to calm their emotions, be able to, walk away. And although rattled, they can come back to this secure place if they've had secure attachment. But I want to capitalize on what you said about the whole, don't we all need to be compassionate? Let's go back to the little 7-year-old. The friend goes, I don't like you anymore. You stink, or whatever they say, something awful.
Right.
And right, when you look at that 7-year-old, what would have been the most helpful thing? What did that kiddo need the most? Well, I can tell you it's not criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get why that kid, didn't have anything to do with you. Sometimes I don't want anything to do with you. In fact, why don't you go to your room right now and just be quiet? I don't want to hear a thing from you. That's not what that kid needs. The kid needs compassion.
And I just had a flash in my mind to illustrate what happens. I believe when we're all born, we're equal. Yeah, different cultures, different languages we speak. 2 healthy babies are born at the same moment. They're the same. It's a clean slate. From there, that's what shapes their lives. And look at a 2-year-old, even a 3-year-old. Those kids have no fear. They're the best. There's no shame. There's like, put a cape on that kid. It's super kid. Da da da. Let me do that. Let me do that. I can do that. I can do that. Now they're 7. They've been through some stuff. They've internalized some things. Best friend left them flat on the playground. And even from that point forward, that's where it all, I don't want to say goes wrong, but becomes challenging as life goes on. And, that between that 3-year-old super kid and that 7-year-old, that little window right there shaped them for the rest of their lives. I ask this question all the time, and I don't have an answer. How do we get through life, Shari? With knowing all of this that we know now, how do we even do this? I wonder. I don't have an answer.
Some do it well and some don't, right?
Point.
Yeah. I mean, people who've done it well or have found their ways to be able to soothe themselves or move beyond are not showing up in my office. Why would they?
Right.
But, I myself have done a tremendous amount of healing from all kinds of things that were damaging as a child, which helps me to be able to identify and with that person and what the issue is. And sometimes they'll be in such despair and I'll say, can I just hold the hope for you for a while? Well, I think we'll get there, but I know where we're going. And I anticipate you're going to feel better after a while. So, you can't promise anything, but you can hold hope. And they're like, you can just watch them. Like somebody's finally got some tools to help me.
Yeah. In my journey, where did I learn all this stuff? From talking to people like you and podcasts. Seriously, that's where it all started crystallizing, coming clear, and it showed up at the right time because the universe said it needed to. But yeah, this insight on all of this, it is our life. I mean, this is probably the most important podcast anybody will listen to if you want to live a great life and the life you feel you deserve. Because there's stuff holding you back, and it could have been that 7-year-old on the playground and many other things connected to it. Well, like when you start adding it up, Shari, like all the things that we've been exposed to as kids, then as teenagers, young adults, call them traumas, big T, little t. Whoa, a lot going on there. Time to do a little bit of work and be happy. How do we find you? And you can work with anybody anywhere virtually, correct?
Yes. So one of the ways is to do an email address would be itc.shari.edgell@gmail.com. That's probably the best. And then if you want and kind of look into the next several podcasts we do, I'm looking at introducing some material that actually you can see on the blessing.blog. which has to do with how we're dealing with stress in life.
Bring it on. It's so important. This, in importance, I'm on your page there. What we're talking about here in stress, like they're the determining factors on how your life is going to go. Shari, thank you so much for being here today. For me, validating a lot, understanding a lot for all of us, and how we have a little bit of work to do. But look what's on the other side of that. A beautiful life. Looking forward next time we get together.
Thank you. Good to see you. Take care.
Too.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.